morning, everybody. One of the benefits to going last is listening to the other three national officers before I make my remarks. As they highlight our successes, our ALPA wins, it reinforces to me the important role finances play in our association. I've said this before, almost all decisions boil down to funding and finances. Whether it's to fulfill our advocacy efforts, to properly fund pilot initiatives and activities, or to have a healthy war chest, though not an excessive one. It brings a great sense of pride to know the role that our whole finance team has played in helping achieve the successes that Jason, Wendy, and Sean all spoke about today. ALPA is in a strong financial position. That's evidenced in so many areas, most notably in our ability to conduct the first of its kind across the board dues return offer that Jason referenced earlier. Think as well about some of the other things we've achieved together. All the new programs and policies, the new spending rules that bring ALPA financial policies into the 21st century, like the changes to our own local councils and the abilities to spend monies within their budgets. We achieved all of that and returned some of our pilots' hard-earned money to them as well. Part of the role of the ALPA's Vice President Finance Treasurer is to chair the Structure, Services, and Financial Review Committee, or SAFER, another alphabet group, I guess you'd say. There's lots of them around here. This group, supported by ALPA's Finance Department staff, has been an integral part to these successes as well. And we're not done working yet either. This week, you will be asked to consider several resolutions that the Executive Council has set forward, including a number that came from SAFER. You heard much more about them in committee, but I'd like to highlight a few of them now. First, since I've already mentioned the dues return offer, we are proposing a structure to guide potential future offers to return dues if the A&S account runs a surplus. Benchmarks that, if met, would mandate such an offer unless the Executive Council votes not to do so. That clause, allowing the Executive Council to act, is a safeguard just in case financial circumstances change enough from one year to the next that it's deemed wiser to use our excess revenue in other areas. We're also suggesting an additional update to our war chest, the Major Contingency Fund. Previously, we created a new grant from the MCF that went to pilot groups after signing a new contract to help fund implementation process. This week, you will be asked to approve another new use for the MCF. Currently, most pilot groups must spend their entire budget before accessing any MCF fund with a few rare exceptions. This change would allow for U.S. pilot groups in mediation to use $1 from their MCF grant for every dollar they spend from their MEC budget up to 20% of the total MCF grant. This would also establish the same cost sharing requirement for Canadian MECs with positive balances that are in conciliation. Currently, there is no requirement, and our policy allows full feather access. I will say, though, it does exempt those that have already received an MCF grant in Canada, but it also opens up the ability for some MECs currently in mediation in the U.S. And of course, it also allows your full access if you were to run out of your money within your MEC account. Another topic the SAFER Committee was tasked to review relates to tax gross-up on certain ALPA reimbursed expenses. This recommended change would provide additional tax gross-up to members in higher income brackets to cover the additional costs due to their higher marginal rate, higher than the one used in ALPA's base calculation. For ALPA paid expenses, reimbursements deemed to be taxable income. The purpose of this change is so that a pilot's net receipts will be a true reimbursement, and it's geared solely toward making our volunteers whole. Due to our contractual gains, the tax rates some pilots have, we are running into situations where a pilot would be losing money in the reimbursement process, and this adjustment will help remedy that. Finally, you'll be voting on a policy update regarding how ALPA pays our pilot leaders who act as custodians for a pilot group to provide clear and simple policy language regarding this important topic. I'm extremely proud of the hard work that the SAFER Committee and our finance team have completed to bring these recommendations to you, and the work continues. With several recommendations from SAFER that have already been implemented, and those that you will consider at this meeting for the MCF, SAFER will turn our attention to the Operating Contingency Fund, or the OCF. As you'll see later in the charts and graphs portion of my presentation, the OCF has grown exponentially over the past decade. And much like the MCF, we must ask the question, how much is too much? And when is it enough? As I said earlier, we want a healthy war chest, but not an excessive one. We'll be studying this fund to determine what our target balance should be, as well as new ways we could potentially use the OCF to expand its value to our members. We're also still looking at everything associated with a potential dues reduction. We've already begun the discussion, but this will likely take some time. We want to make sure that if it's done right, and it's done in a way that's good for everyone within the association. We'll continue to update you on our progress in this area that I know is important to many of you and many of our pilots. It's also important to update you on the association's current finances, so let's take a look at how we finished 2023, where we are in 2024, and our budget for 2025. And yes, this is where I start my death by PowerPoint presentation. As you see here, the association finished last year with a net surplus of more than $115 million. This was, as we've reported in announcing the dues return offer, due to new contracts for many of our pilot groups and increasing revenue throughout the industry. This year is shaping up to be another very strong year for ALPA. These numbers are as of June 30th, so halfway through the year, and as you can see, we're already showing a surplus of more than $71 million. That's $14 million more than the year-to-date results I reported in the fall 2023 Executive Board, and that was through the end of August, as compared to just through the end of June this year. On these next few slides, we look at our dues revenue and expenses, actual versus budgeted, both on a monthly basis and a cumulative basis. This year, 2023, is signified by a dotted line, one for actual dues or expenses, depending on the chart, and one for budgeted. In similar fashion, 2024 year-to-date is shown with a solid line. The chart illustrates both budgeted versus actual and 2024 versus 2023 in the same chart. We typically see an early bump each year due to annual revenue sharing distributions. However, the significant bump in March 2023 is due to Delta's new contract, while the peak in November 2023 is due to United's new contract and its retro, non-retro pay, as we now call it. As you can see, actual dues are outpacing budgeted dues each month in 2024, leading to that net surplus we saw earlier. Now we look at how it all adds up. This slide shows the cumulative total of dues over the course of the year. Our actual dues in green are once again significantly outpacing budgeted dues in yellow for the fiscal year of 2024. From our monthly dues, we move on to our monthly expenses, both budgeted and actual. These can be a bit more up and down as various meetings and events incur extra costs, such as our leadership training conference in the spring and the board of directors in the fall of even years. So far this year, you can see that our actual expenses are right in line with the budget. In fact, with the year-to-date chart through June, you can see that our actual expenses this year are running slightly below our budgeted expenses, while last year our actual expenses were slightly higher than budgeted. This chart, much like the dude's rug in The Big Lebowski, ties it all together. We're comparing the dues and expenses, both actual and budgeted, over the past 5 years, 1 year pre-COVID through today. As you can see, our actual dues have come in higher, sometimes significantly so, than budgeted dues, with expenses either even or slightly above their budget. One interesting thing to showcase is just how much ALPA has grown. Our year-to-date 2024 dues income, that final orange bar, which again is through June 30th, so only just half the year, is already higher than our budgeted dues for a full year of 2018 and years prior. Next, the operating contingency fund. The OCF is healthy and continuing to grow. It's an extremely important resource to have as a backstop for our pilot groups. But as mentioned earlier, we need to make sure this and the MCF are not excessive. As such, the SAFER Committee will continue to evaluate other possible uses and applications of the OCF. Next, we turn our attention to the Major Contingency Fund, the MCF. The MCF has continued to grow this year, even with the additional use of funds with contract implementation grants to our pilot groups. The fund balance supports our ability to allow the matching funds use for pilot groups that I highlighted earlier that will be up for a vote later this week. Here you see the 2025 budget approved by the Executive Council. We'll be taking a closer look at the budget in Delegate Committee 1, but here are the basics. The total budgeted dues income is $337.8 million, another 10% increase over last year's dues budget, and is a continuing sign of the strength of our new contracts and the post-COVID rebound of the industry. The pie chart you see here is broken up according to the percentages in our bylaws, with the amounts on the right taken off the top before the remaining total is divided amongst the MECs, Administrative and Support Account, OCF, and LECs. The budget before you also includes a strategic reserve with $35 million set aside for a potential return to our members, regardless if there's any additional dues return offer, and $4 million to the headquarters building fund. Speaking of the building fund, you can see here the current balance along with the budgeted addition of another $4.3 million this year. That will provide us with an anticipated year-end balance of $15 million. Adding in the 4.0 we put into the budget this year will be over $20 million by next year. This committee meets regularly, and we've gone out and looked at a few buildings. We want to keep our collective finger on the pulse of real estate in the area. I want to reiterate, though, that no decisions have been made, no current plans are in place. This fund and the related headquarters building committee are geared simply toward making sure that all options are available to the association when our lease of Vallow Park is up. As many have said, from Benjamin Franklin, even Taylor Swift, for all you Swifties out there, I know there are many, I have a few kids at home, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I want to close with a request and an invitation. Many of the items this officer team has worked to implement are items we noticed at our own MECs, things that perhaps weren't working to their fullest or obstacles that could be removed for a smoother process. If there are policies you notice within your pilot group that you think need to be addressed, please get in touch with me and we'll take a look. We need to continue to improve our association, working and moving forward together. Thank you.